Hey up YouTube, Ryan Paul Troy, the Yorkshire filmmaker here, and today I'm going to be going through some amazing back to basic tips for you on high dynamic range, mise-en-scene, diegetic and non-diegetic sounds, and also slow motion. But before all that, roll those titles. Boom! Yep, so welcome to another Back to Basics episodes with me, Ryan Paul Troy, the Yorkshire filmmaker, and today we're going to be talking about HDR, mise-en-scene, slow motion, diegetic and non-diegetic sound. So it could be a long one, so I will put little sections for where we're going to be within this episode on something that is a bit more exciting to yourselves. So first of all, we're going to start off with, what is high dynamic range photography? So high dynamic range photography is a twofold process that you take pictures and then you process the pictures. Now a little bit of this I explained in my episode last week on the back to basics of ISO, exposure and shutter speed, where I basically explained it as this. Ryan, from last week, explain it. Now you set up your camera in one place, keep it in that same exact place. Now you've got three locations in this one place. So say for example it's a church, you want to take a photo, you've got a gravestone on your left here, you've got the church here, and then you've got the steeple here. So what you do is you take one photo with the flash gun on the first part, which will be the grave. Then you get if you need to have a couple of different things like a wireless adapter between your flash and your camera. Then you go and take the same photo in the same place without moving the camera with the flash going onto the steeple, and then the same again with the flash on the church. Now then what you could do is take these three images, put these three images inside of one image, merge them all together with some Photoshop knowledge and skills, and you get one really nice exposed photo. So the best thing is to capture as much as true dynamic range in a scene as practically possible, or as artistically desirable as well at the same time. So without pictures you don't have high dynamic range. However, you don't have to travel to exotic places, so you can exploit high dynamic range to its fullest either at the same time. You can just do it with landscape photography, architecture, everyday subjects easily found in your own backyard and local community. What I do say though is to think about how you're going to do it as well. Quite a lot of cameras these days has it built in. The 5D Mark IV has it built in so that you can set your exposure to three separate levels. It'll take three photos and then you set the exposure to each one that you want to use. So it really does work pretty well as well. I very rarely shoot in high dynamic range photography. I use high dynamic range mainly when I'm filming, which again is built into the software of the Canon 5D Mark IV. Smack it onto, it only works when you're shooting in 25 frames per second sadly, but you set the high dynamic range and then you've got more control when you're editing it in the post, and it works in that sense. But the process is result with a specialised software to produce the image. Specialised software is something like Photoshop, Lightroom. You can use these. Photoshop is really good for it, but Lightroom actually has a part of the software where you can choose the three images and it smashes them all together, and then you can edit and image each little tiny bit of what you need. So it does work, and there is software out there that works for it, but HDR relies on a combination of the software and specific high dynamic range that you use within the camera, which helps you create high dynamic range. Without software processing, you don't have high dynamic range. So it's only high dynamic range photography. I'm just letting you know a little bit about it. It's something that if you are interested in, you're probably best going searching elsewhere for it, as I'm not a specialist in high dynamic range photography. But like I said, I have dabbled with it myself, and it's just a little bit of information there for you if you do decide to go into it. Slow motion. A lot of filmmakers use slow motion to create a more pleasing look into the video. If you look at a lot of filmmakers on YouTube, Peter McKinnon, he uses 120 frames per second in literally every single video that he's ever made, and it looks absolutely amazing. But it is a very pleasing thing to watch in slow motion, and one of the biggest films to have started this whole slow motion-esque massiveness was The Matrix in 1999. Now that film used bullet time segment that slowed down, and they used a 3D environment to create a timeless piece of footage admired and loved by millions of people and filmmakers alike. And if you haven't seen that scene, you've been living under a rock and you need to go and check it out. If you have seen that scene, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the best thing to do is look at the behind the scenes of it, because it must have easily had about 60 cameras or something stupid all in a circle, all doing this a shot at the same time, and then they've pieced it all together and done it in slow. And it's, you know, what you do now with one camera, you know, a mechanical machinery like you have nowadays and sliders. They didn't have that, so they literally had 60 cameras recording at the same time, and then in post literally stitched it all together. So, you know, absolutely amazing looking at that. Slow motion is a very, very good tool to have. I've used it quite a lot in a lot of my filmmaking. Now, here is a quick bit of slow motion I did last week at a gig of a drummer, and oh, wow. So as you can see, it's just beautiful, beautiful stuff that you can get with it, and it just adds so much depth to a music video if you're going to be doing it. One of my favourite things to do is if you're doing slow motion of a drummer, pour a little bit of beer onto their snare drum, a little bit of beer onto the floor toms, and literally as they smack it, all the water comes up, but because it's in slow motion, it's boom! Oh, it's nice, it's good. Mise-en-scene. So mise-en-scene composes the recognisable attributes of a film. The setting, the actors, it includes costumes, makeup, props, other natural and artificial details that characters used in the spaces in films. The term is borrowed from the French theatrical expression meaning put in the scene. So basically, mise-en-scene means to put into the scene. So in other words, it describes the stuff in the frame. So the setting, lighting, costume and staging. Now these are all including some special effects that are closely related to mise-en-scene. Now as you can see at the moment, how I usually shoot my videos, this one's giving back to basics. I essentially have two sets. Three sets, I've let someone slip there, haven't I? I essentially have two sets. This one, which is a back to basics set, which I have managed to turn it around a bit because the last couple of episodes it's had my softbox light in, so now I've got my two softbox lights here instead, so you know, makes it a bit more wider. And the second set at the moment is in front of my fireplace, where I have all my little bits and bats like me Teesside University. Actually, I'll show you. So basically, as you can see, I've got, this is my mise-en-scene, so I've got me, I'm a massive Batman fan, a couple of photos that I've taken. Like I say, I'm a massive Batman fan. So I've got all my little bits and bats, my clapperboard. Literally, when I'm sat up here, this area is to show me, this is my area, this is how I determine myself. So I want people to look at it and think, oh, I must like Batman, because there's a lot of Batman stuff in the background. Oh, I must like filmmaking, he's got a clapperboard. He's obviously got a degree. So yeah, all this all builds into my mise-en-scene. Let's go back to the desk. So yeah, that's my my mise-en-scene. You know, I've got the desk at the moment, which is a pretty bit of a mess, and this area is a mess. But that's all right. The bit that you're looking at is not too bad. So we'll start with setting. Setting creates both a sense of place and a mood, and it also reflects a character's emotional state of mind. It can be entirely fabricated within a studio, either as authentic reconstruction of reality or fiction, but you can be found and filmed on location. Basically, your setting works in a way that you want it to be. So somebody is an alcoholic, and your character is an alcoholic, smokes all the time. So how you'd set this for your mise-en-scene is you may pan across the table's got empty bottles of alcohol, it's got wine, cigars, cigs, literally just scattered everywhere. So it shows this person in a dark place and there's a bit of an addiction. So we'll go on lighting, because lighting is, other than sound, is the most important part of any filmmaker's kit. Whether it's just for a quick vlog video like this, as I say, I have this light here, and then I have another one there, so one's lighting up me from the back, one's lighting me up the front, you know, just gives it a nice sort of thing. So lighting is key, which is really funny because one of the lights is called the key light. but lighting helps create a film. So I'll be doing a video later today with different lighting techniques, but for the most there's a 3-point lighting system. So, first one is key light. Did you get that? I said that before? So when setting up a key light, the first step is setting it in the proper place. Typically it's placed on the right of the camera at a 45-degree angle. Well, this works for most of the time. It really depends on what type of scene that you've got and what you're trying to illuminate. The best thing is to play with different angles and different positions until you're happy with the result. Remember, most of the lighting is emitted from the key light, so the higher intensity may be needed. So at the moment, my key light is this light. So it's to the right of the camera. Obviously you can't see it because it's thin. If I can just... No. This one's my key light, so basically that one's the one that's lighting me up. This one is my fill light. The position of the fill light depends on where the shadows have been cast from the key light, and it should be placed in a spot that can illuminate there's dark spaces on the subject. So at the moment this light is lighting up this side of my face, whereas this one is lighting up this part of me, so that it sort of works in motion with each other. You see, I'm only going for a 2 lighting system for this. I do also have my ceiling light on as well, just to give it a bit of extra light, but that doesn't actually really do a lot. But basically you need to remember that the fill light should not be as bright as the key light. So you can use different things like soft boxes to soften the light, and you can get quite a lot of dimmable lights. Mine are just cheap ones that do the job, to be honest with you, and it still looks pretty damn good for whatever I need to use it for. I do also have a lot of LED lights, which I will go through at another time. Some of them which are dimmable that I use, especially when I'm out on a shoot out in the park or like that, and outside in the dark rooms, and they're used for that. And also you've got your rim light. So when you position your rim light, make sure it doesn't really provide any frontal illumination to the subject. It's just to create an outline of light. So the rim light is specifically placed behind the character. So don't be afraid to adjust the angle. Basically, you can take any of these lighting systems. This is just a basic thing, and you can change it. You could do it so that you have one light above, and you have what's called raccoon eye. So basically, it covers up your eyes. As I say, I'll go into more of these techniques at another time. But there's a lot that you can do. So depending on the subject you're illuminating, and if there's a background, you may want to adjust your settings in your application of lights, your 3D setup, to only illuminate the subject or maybe only illuminate the background. You can also have spotlights. You don't have to have just 3 lights. You could have 5 or 6 lights, as long as they're all being used in certain ways. You might have it that you've got this spotlight like these, 2 lights here, and maybe you get another light coming in that's got like a bit of a red glow or a blue glow that just sort of lightens up a different mood. So you've got all these different ways. So arguably, the most easily noticeable aspect of a mise-en-scene is costume. Costume includes makeup and wardrobe choices to convey a character's personality or status. So if you're going to be doing a 1980s film, you're not going to have them wearing something that people wear nowadays, because, you know, then it won't be a 1980s film. If you're making a Wild West film, you wouldn't have somebody walk through with a long bloody tunic or something like that, you know what I mean? It just wouldn't work. So you work with what you've got. And then you've got your space and staging, acting, blocking, special effects and more. This all comes under mise-en-scene, and I would need a full series just to explain everything for mise-en-scene. It's just so far. If anyone does want to have want that to be done, just drop me a message in the comments below, and I'll do a video on mise-en-scene in a full detail. The next thing to lighting and mise-en-scene is the most important, and that's sound. Sound is the most important thing that you could ever do. You could have the worst footage, and you could have amazing sound, and people would really be like, wow. You could have a terrible sound and amazing footage, and people won't care, because the sound puts people off the visions. So basically there's diegetic and non-diegetic sound. So what is diegetic sound? Diegetic sound is a source that's visible on the screen, or whose source is implied to the present of the action of the film. Voices of characters, sounds made up of objects in the story. So for example, that's a diegetic sound. Just banged on my table, the ring has made the noise, it's diegetic sound. But music represented coming from instruments, so again, so this is diegetic sound. So diegetic sound can be either on screen or off screen depending on whether the source is within the frame or outside the frame. So another term for diegetic sound is actual sound. So that is actual sound, actually coming from my guitar. As I'm talking to you right now, la 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 la, this is diegetic sound. Right? So, non-diegetic sound is also known as sound that's not there. So this is non-diegetic sound. So this has been recorded afterwards as sort of like a narrator or a commentary. So back to you, Ryan. Thanks, narrator Ryan. So yeah, non-diegetic sounds is narrator's commentary, sound effects, which is added to for the dramatic effect, mood music, and non-diegetic sound is represented from coming from the source outside of the story space. So the distinction between diegetic and non-diegetic sound depends on understanding of the conventions of film viewing and listening. We all know that certain sounds are represented coming from the story world, whether it comes from anywhere else. So if you've got a lion roar, you're most likely going to see a lion. You wouldn't put a lion's roar if there were no lion. Let me just go put this back. So thank you very much for watching. I've been Ryan Paul Troy, the Yorkshire filmmaker, and I will be back next week on the Back to Basics with editing techniques to teach you some of the editing techniques that we use on a daily basis. But until then, I've been Ryan Paul Troy. Hit the like button, share if you can, and also hit the bell so you don't miss out on an episode, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!